The next panel or the next discussion is going to be with two of my favorite entrepreneurs in the whole wide world, and we're going to try to get inside the head of a serial entrepreneur, because entrepreneurs are maybe a special breed of people. As soon as they've sold the company and done everything they wanted to do, they start getting an itch, and then that grows and it turns into a new company. Stressful days on plane, worries, and then another beautiful company see the light of day. Somebody said that entrepreneurship is like giving birth. It's bloody, it's painful, but then it's really beautiful in the end. Another entrepreneur, and he's going to join us on stage soon, he said that entrepreneurship is like being a spermatozoa. You got to swim really fast to get to the egg. I don't know which one of those is the best, but I'll show you a little movie that sort of shows how I look upon entrepreneurship. It kind of starts something like this. Somebody realizes that there's maybe cheese somewhere out there, and they leave the security of their home or their work and try to get some of that cheese. Some of them ignore the risk completely. Some of them take it consciously. They still want some cheese. After a while, they think they're really smart. They get cocky, and they say, well, I can do this. This is great. Let's do more of this. Near-death experience happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, and then they're slowly dying. But a certain brand of entrepreneurs, they just take on challenges and turn them into great opportunities. And two of them are here. Brent Hoberman, founder of LastMinute.com, May.com, MyDeco, and many others. Brent, stage is yours. Please have a seat. And the founder of, and I have to take a deep breath, Jazztel, Fawn, and a number of other companies. Please, Martin, take the seat.
Thank you.
So you guys have been building companies for a very long period of time, and as soon as you sort of get out of a company, you start getting into the next company. What's wrong with you? Why do you create these companies? What's the itch about?
You want to go first, or?
I mean, we have different. I think we have different strategies. I mean, sure. I mean, why? Because for me, it was just have to do something interesting every day, and that's the first check. But the second check, I think, Martin's got deeper into his next company, which he can talk about than I did for many. I spread across sort of 10 companies, and maybe some of that was because I was so scarred from the first experience of actually taking a company public so quickly after 18 months and working. In a very obsessive, like most of us here probably, very obsessively, 7 days a week, non-stop, and not being able to talk about anything else.
To take
we went from date of go live to public 18 months, and it was valued, as you may remember, at like almost $1 billion at going public. So kind of crazy experience. And the first thing we had to do every morning was to check the site was actually up, even though it had this amazing valuation. It was invariably down because the internet didn't work that well then back in '98.
I remember that.
Yeah. So I think for me it was right. Well, I want to do something really interesting every day, and starting companies is the most satisfying thing next to seeing your children. But I also want to be able to see my children. So it was let's do lots of different things and not have that single stress yet of being CEO again.
No, but still, you sort of come up with an idea and it turns into Founders Forum, and then it's a Founders Capital, and then it's MyDeco. So they keep popping up.
Yeah, no, I love, and I mean, Easy Car, I took to Stelios and said, let's do Airbnb for cars, and I think that is one other thing. The other thing is that when you get too deep in one idea, with your nose this close to the grindstone, how can you have any vision? So one of the joys of doing what I do now is I can still have lots of ideas, and it's not just about the one thing, which was what happened before.
Martin, you started out in New York building companies, and then you built successful telecom businesses, moved to Spain, built Jazztel, which is one of the largest telcos over there. And now for the last 7 years, is it? You built Fawn. 7 million, I always get the figure right. Is it 7 million now?
7 million hotspots now, yes.
7 million hotspots.
No, and it's become the largest Wi-Fi network in the world, but just like that mouse there, we almost died, and we had our chan moment. I think of answering your question, why build companies. I have taken long vacations and periods in which I wasn't building companies. At least 4 times in my life, I've taken a year or more off, completely off. So that is when you start asking yourself, well, should I build a company, or should I just hang out and have a good time and sail and fly or whatever, cycle and see the family? And I think it's I'm not religious at all, but I think it is some kind of calling, not a God calling, but a personal calling.
You feel a responsibility to create?
You feel, in the case of phone, for example, you feel there's a problem out there to be solved. Wi-Fi everywhere but locked, and you say, well, why couldn't people have access to it? Why are people building Wi-Fi networks, installing even more routers over a universe of routers that is already out there and it's just locked? It's like you see an inefficiency that looks at you and says, this is wrong, this is inefficient, it shouldn't be like this. And you and you just want to do something about it. You want to do something about it. It's sort of like you're angry, you're upset, sometimes you're disgusted. You say, this just can't be this way, and then you think of something. So I think many times it comes out of frustration, it comes out of waiting in line, it comes out of moments where you just say, but things could be different. And then it's an obsession. Then you can get the idea out of your mind. Then you start talking to people. In my case, I always use a lot of social media. I blog it, I tweet it. I feel that
as opposed to others that want to keep everything secret, you come up with an idea, you blog it?
Exactly. It's interesting. Yeah, that's true. A lot of people tell me that. They say, but that's crazy. Everybody's going to copy you. And then comes the second part, which is not that they don't copy you. It's about the ability to execute the idea. Mm-hmm. But then also, frankly, I think many ideas I have are just bad or idiotic or don't deserve the light of the day. And they get very quickly killed on Twitter and my blog or... so yes, I prefer to put an idea to the Darwinian. It's sort of the Darwinian elements of sharing the idea, because there's what other entrepreneurs like to do, and especially of course what trolls like to do, is to kill you and your idea, right? And so you have one and you share it. I mean, I can share one right now that I had last week.
I just want you to share the idea you had last week.
No. Please, no. If you want to, I mean, yeah, I can leave it for later.
No, but I want to hear it. But I really want to. I want to understand a little bit more on how you tick, and if that's something that is an adopted view on things, or if it's genetics or some distortion. I mean, when you look at entrepreneurs, you meet a lot of entrepreneurs as investors as well. Are they a special breed of people, or are they just anybody thinking in a certain way? Could you transform that to others?
Yeah, I mean, I think we often talk, and we're relatively new to the venture capital game, and as we look at the best CEOs, we often say that there is something wrong with them. There is something unchanged and unhinged, and they might not always be the person you most want to have dinner next to. But I think, although they do have to have, CEOs and entrepreneurs have to have charm, I think, definitely, and a sales capability. But I think what we talked about, the level of obsession, and actually often a driving sense of insecurity. Some sort of, I think insecurity and ambition are locked together in some way. I think you need a bit of that to keep wanting to prove yourself. And I think maybe why the English have historically not had so many entrepreneurs, dare I say this, is because there's an innate confidence that the English system used to breed. And now I think that there's probably more of the world is more ruthless, and there's less of that, life's just going to be okay. There's more of actually, it's not unless I make my world better.
What do you think? Do you think there's
well, I've been teaching entrepreneurship, and I teach now at Columbia University entrepreneurship. In fact, I had my class 2 days ago, and I was thinking exactly about this, and I said, when I teach entrepreneurship, I feel like a piano instructor that some students just play and some others make music, right? And I that's how I think. It's like you're a piano teacher, and you have these students, and some just play the keys and there's no music, right? And then you have a student, like I should say, I don't know if Bernard is here from Busu, but he was my student and now...
He is here.
Oh, okay. So you have a student like Bernard and you say, well, this guy plays music, okay? So teaching entrepreneurship, you know that a lot of people are going to... it's unusual or it's a career where a lot of people try, very few people succeed, and that's like music. But the ones who do, it sounds, you say, there's something here. So in my angel investing, I try to to listen to that music. Is there something there to what these people are saying? Do they have what it takes to be an entrepreneur? And I think very few people do, but it is recognizable, the ones who do.
Yeah, I think just also, I think obviously the characteristics are often talked about, but I think probably one of the most important is just lateral thinking, is people who see a problem and then work their way around it. And that's something I think is quite hard to teach.
Yeah, it is hard to teach.
What's your next idea?
No, it's not my next idea. It's just one of many. It's one of the type of idea that I would throw to a crowd and say, if you think there's anything to it. So I was thinking last week that there's a huge industry all over the world about protecting people's homes, right? And people have cameras in their homes, and they have all the alarm industry, which is probably a multi-billion-dollar industry everywhere. And then I thought, why are people so concerned about protecting their homes and not protecting themselves? Why aren't smartphones, which have accelerometers, cameras, microphones, why isn't there an industry about protecting people through their smartphones, right? So if your smartphone is going, well, GPS shows you're moving at 60 miles and a second later you're not moving, well, something probably happened to you and your next of kin should be notified, right? And so I thought about that, about an industry focused on people, not on homes. And every week I have probably some other idea like that. And so I could either keep it secret and start developing apps. It's not very difficult to develop just an app that realizes if you crashed or something like that. But when I share these ideas, partly to keep the focus on fun and not to go in all directions, doing all sorts of things, but partly because when I do it, people say, no, there's already a company like that, or part of that it's in a company, or which shouldn't deter people, because actually some of the most successful ideas in the world are ideas which are not so original, but are like there were search engines before Google, there were certainly messaging service before Twitter, there were social networks before Facebook, so a lot of it is about exactly how you execute it. But then sometimes the service doesn't exist at all. I don't know if there's an alarm company that sells your personal alarm, that listens in through your smartphone when they think something happened, that they do what alarm companies do, but for you. But that's just one example. So when I think of these things, I say, I'm just going to throw that idea, I'm going to blog it, I'm going to share it, and see what happens.
Another thing, a lot of normal mortals, they believe that, if they sold a company for a silly amount of money, they would just go for the rest of their life or go sailing or whatever. That is very seldom true. For people that build companies and sold them, they very seldom just relax. Could you just reflect on that? How is that what makes you want to undertake all the hardship of building new companies? And I know, so the fun journey, you've been like stressed out and flying all around, and investing in a lot of companies is also stressful when they don't go well and so forth. Why do that?
I think it's daily stimulation. I think it's people who go away. I've seen people definitely go take a year off after a sale or that sort of thing, and then quite happily, but by the end of it, they are kicking their feet, kicking around. And I think there's also a desire, once you've run a company, and I was with one of the guys who sold he made over 10 billion, and he was like, what he was saying is relevance. He remembers when he was doing that, running that company, he was absolutely relevant, and everybody was calling him for interesting deals and interesting stuff. And then afterwards, the only people calling him were investment, people who wanted him to take money off him. But I think so. It is about that satisfaction. I think it's, again, what is the best thing that happens to you every day? What do you enjoy most? And most entrepreneurs enjoy the sense of creating something, the joy of doing a deal, that sort of stuff.
But many people are doing that in large companies as well. The entrepreneurs, are they different? Or I sometimes think that there's a too clean cut. If you're sitting in a basement, you're an entrepreneur, that's cool. If you're changing the world working on a large corporation, that is not, you don't get the roses and the applause and so forth, but your impact is much, much higher. Do you think, Jazztel was a fairly large company, Fon is getting larger and larger, at least in terms of users. Are the others that are not your entrepreneur, the original entrepreneur, what are they? How do you look upon that, employees in entrepreneurial companies?
The people still running it. I think it's partly, but attitude to risk. It's that, I guess, once you put so much on the line, the highs and lows are both worse. But I think it's a bit of an addiction. You get addicted to that.
But I think also those people are essential. Like I disclosed maybe 6 months ago that I only work until 2 and I take 12-week vacations every year. Yeah. and people were shocked. I came out of the closet basically to say that, because people think that if you work hard, you have results. And I think in entrepreneurship, time and impact are not really related. And in fact, at the office, you many times kill the company, or you get fired. Like I got fired of 2 ventures that I was running in the past because of annoying the people who you're talking about, which are the people who make the companies big by always having new ideas and changing strategy and so on. So for example, at FundNow, I work with Alex Pureger, my COO, who's an amazing manager, who's really a much better manager than I am. And he works on the day-to-day, and I work on the new strategy. I work on product design and deal making, and he works on making sure that the company doesn't fall apart, which is essential. So it took me a long time in my career to realize my limitations, where I was bad at, and what I was good at. And then the idea of taking vacations while I work has made it such that now I can go on through these marathons that you're talking about, because it's not always like this. Sometimes I have to work for 3 weeks in a row, Saturday and Sunday. Then I take time off, because the rhythm of a company has very little to do with the laws that society have made about how people should work, about Saturday and Sunday, about sort of the biblical rest. An entrepreneur and his company or her company is really not about following the rhythm of the week and the rhythm of society. It's the rhythm of that company that you're trying to run. So by taking vacations, by leaving the office, when I'm at the office, my door is open, people come in. I fix things, I extinguish fires, but I don't build a great company at the office. So instead, when I'm on vacation, we're doing other things, I have the base. Well, the idea of fun I had when I was on vacation, actually. So I think you have to find your own rhythm as an entrepreneur. But last weekend I was with Jack Dorsey at this retreat in Wyoming, and I asked Jack. There was only 4 entrepreneurs, and we were taking a few days off. But he showed up a little later than everyone else, and I asked him, "But Jack, do you take vacations?" And he said, "Well." He says, sometimes on Saturday I go for walks in Napa Valley, right? And I was like, sometimes on Saturday? Like, so that means that he works every other day, obviously Sundays, and that he never takes a vacation. And Sergey of Google hadn't taken a vacation in 5 years. It was 5 years into Google until he took his first vacation. And there's an ethic in Silicon Valley about just never being on vacation and always being on call. And they build the most amazing companies in the world. So maybe my formula is not the right one, but at least I have a life.
But picking up on that thread, Silicon Valley, you've been building companies in New York and in Spain. Spain, maybe not a hot spot right now for sort of developing companies, one might think. You're working a lot here with Downing Street as well, and stimulating entrepreneurship, and Founders Forum that Brent and Johnny founded is just an amazing constellation of entrepreneurs from all over the world coming together. Where is the best place to start a company? And why is a place good to start a company? Well, but just as a byline, I've never met a city where the officials don't tell me, we in Dresden, we're going to make the Silicon Valley of Germany. Or everybody wants to make
I think the arms race is, it's fantastic time to be an entrepreneur, because there is an arms race in almost every city where they're awake are saying the way out of this mess is entrepreneurship. So it's fantastic. So what they're all doing is saying, let's invest, let's make it easier, let's lower the taxes, let's get all the incentives, let's drive entrepreneurs here. And the smarter ones are saying, let's also build an ecosystem. And then what they're doing is saying, let's go to the big companies, the Intels and Googles and Facebooks, and get them to do more in our city, and then incentivize other entrepreneurs. In Europe, I would say, I'm biased, I think it's unquestionably London, and then there are arguments between Berlin and Stockholm and other cities, but I think London is now really listening to entrepreneurs and creating an ecosystem. And it's great you guys have come here today, and I think there's so much going on here. I think for entrepreneurs now, they've got to work out how much networking they do and how much of their running their business do they do. Because
it's funny. You brought us to Cameron a year ago on Downing Street, and he said, "What can I do to get you to move here?" It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's really a different take on entrepreneurship from a political side. What do you think? I mean, you've been close
No,
to governments
I
as
think
well.
the best place is Silicon Valley. The second best are New York and London, maybe then Berlin. Then there's some cities in Europe that are very good for specific startups. There's an unusual thing in Europe, which is most people who live in Europe would prefer to stay where they're from, in their city, with their families and friends. So, for example, Fone is very well based in Madrid because we're an outstanding recruiter in Madrid. We recruit like 4 or 5 engineers a month. But it's okay, you don't need to move your companies there because we'd rather not have so much competition. But I see London clearly as the best in Europe, especially because so many other nations have made it so unfriendly for business. Like France, France seems to be making the case that you suck if you are successful, you know.
Yeah.
And that is Britain's gain, right? They say they only need to say we like you if you're successful. That's all they need to say, and we don't charge you 75% tax. So Britain has benefited from an exodus of continental Europeans who are looking for a friendlier place to start a business, and the Cameron administration, for what I've seen, like you said, has been really excellent at listening to what it takes to create companies and why companies should move. There's still a few things that I've said publicly that I think are wrong here. For example, they have a tremendous focus on the entrepreneur and not the company. Mm-hmm. So if an entrepreneur, you move from continental Europe, they give you an incredible tax treatment, but you lose it when you bring your company here. And I mentioned that I thought that was foolish. And that what they should want, like Ireland, is never mind the entrepreneur. We want the jobs, right? We want the jobs. But I think they're working on that. I think Spain is doing a lot of good reforms, and if the government survives the protests, Spain could rekindle itself as a place for startups. I think Italy and France are very difficult. I think the labor laws are super difficult. I think Germany has the right balance between welfare and sort of benefits to society and entrepreneurship, and it especially has amazing engineers. It has that's what's really the engineers of Germany is even if certain things are not as friendly as the UK, they do have some of the most incredible engineers in the world. So that is a big advantage. And the Scandinavian countries also have incredible professionals, incredible engineers. So the north of Europe has incredible talent. Sometimes it just doesn't have the critical mass.
We compensate that by looks and being very nice.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you would give advice to somebody that has an idea that is just starting to itch, regardless of if they're sitting in a basement or if they actually have a job, and I remember you telling me about your first job interview when the guy said, "So what do you think you can accomplish in this firm?" "At least I'll have your job," and then you didn't get the job. But so regardless if it's an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur. Is there anything you can learn that you can sort of condense and give to somebody as a takeaway from this discussion?
You mean entrepreneur just starting up? What do you?
Somebody that's starting to get an itch. They want to create something completely new, different, breaking rules, doing it differently.
Well, I think. Well, Martin alluded to one thing actually, which is that most entrepreneurs aren't good managers. So I think knowing what your weakness is, I think that was one of the first things that I did. I knew I wanted to build a company with someone else, actually, in my case, because I thought, look, I'm good at these things, but not good at these other things. So finding the great team, I think what I've probably done less well afterwards is actually being more patient with trying to get the right people around me. I've been a bit lazy. I've been like, that one will do. That'll be okay. That's good enough. And good enough doesn't work. No. It's got to be exceptional. And the other people around you have to be exceptional. So I think the DNA with what I did right first time was the DNA of the first people who joined lastminute.com was extraordinary. Witnessed by last week Pete Flint, our fourth employee, taking Trulia public in America for $500 million. You know, so that sort of DNA, your DNA of the first employees means your next 10, your next 20, your next 50 are great. And so patience on that one front. Otherwise, absolute impatience and taking a leaf out of Steve Jobs' book is not so bad. Being a bit brutal is also something I've learned with hindsight, that moments when I was brutal, I was trying to be a nice guy, maybe too much. And I didn't realize that actually that method, that doctrine about if you're brutal, really, because you're impatient and so passionate, then great people respond well to that. And people who are average don't, and they leave. And that's good.
No, I read the other day that somebody studied the GPA, the grade point average, the grades of the richest people in America. And they found that the college GPA was 2.7, which is pretty bad, especially with the great inflation that exists in America. Because I teach now that I teach, I realize that the pressure to giving very, very good grades is enormous, because then the students grade you as a professor and so on. And so I would say the average now must be something like 3.4 or 3.3. So the 2.7 shocked me. So you could say, well, why is it that the entrepreneurs do badly at school, or why is it on the average and so many drop out? So for example, I'm an investor in Tumblr, the blogging platform, and when I met David Karp, he was not a college dropout, he was a high school dropout, right? He was 19 and a high school dropout when I first met him many years ago, and I invested with him on the first round. And so you'd say, well, if you purely focus on entrepreneurs, many of them are people who have been poorly treated by society until the moment they start a company, because probably all they did is go to school where they were told they were pretty mediocre, quasi-idiots. So then if you have a very academic mentality and you're looking for investments and you go for the A student, you see that on the average, it's not the A student that gets you the A company, right? So how do you sync a person who's irreverent, who's actually not that good academically, although some are, who has this itch, from the other ones who are just like that, who are 99.9% and who are just bad at everything, right? So you're trying to distinguish this one characteristic that makes a person who seems to be bad at everything amazing at building a company. Mm-hmm. And it's a special skill to be that person. It's also a special skill to recognize that person.
Mm-hmm. Now that's interesting pieces of advice, and I got a lot of new thoughts from this conversation. Thank you very much for joining us here today. Give it up for Brent and Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.